Hello and welcome to Japanese Craft Beer Reviews. Today we're going to do a review of a beer book, and this is the sixth review we've done. This is beer book review number 6, and it is this book here. It's called 1001 Beers You Must Try Before You Die. And it is edited, the general editor is named Adrian Tierney-Jones, and it's a quintessence edition published by Cassel, 960 pages. It's a massive tome, as you can see, big block of a book. I don't know how heavy it is, but it certainly is weighty in the hand. And you can find a whole series of books, 1001 Before You Die books at www.1001beforeyoudie.com. They got things like 1001 movies, 1001 road trips, 1001 paintings, and fortunately for us, they have 1001 beers as well. And some interesting things about this here is it has a very substantial cover flap, and very hefty and solid, and it's designed to help you mark your place in the book wherever you happen to want to mark it. And so it's very substantial, very solid book, as it should be with this many pages, otherwise you don't want it to fall apart. And this book is not written, of course, by one man, but there's a general editor here, and then there's a panel of experts, and in the back you can see the list of experts. There are many of them. In fact, there are 43 people who helped in the production of this book here. And there's some very famous names too as well. For example, Stephen Beaumont, Stan Hieronymus, Randy Mosher. And so, there's some really good people working on this, people who know the beer in their area. And for Japan, the expert was Brian Harrell, whom I worked with before on his online publication called bento.com. And he had a section for beer on that as well, called Brews News. So he handled the Japanese section, which, as I'm in Japan, I'm much more concerned with than the others. But 1001 beers to try before you die. I think most of us will die before we try them, and I'll tell you later how many I think I've had out of this. And he makes a point in the introduction that all the beers have a story to tell. They all have a story to tell. And it's not necessarily the story of the beer, but the place where they happen to be made, the people who happen to make it, the time when they first started, the ingredients that they use. So, and these are not necessarily the best beers in the world. They don't claim that at all. But a variety of different types of beers. So they include some beers that they call old and venerable styles. They're trying to show the continuity of the beer tradition in the world. For example, Fuller's Brewery in England would be a good example of that. And another, on maybe the opposite side, would be brewing innovation. So a brewery like Mikkeller, has a presence in this book as well. Some of them are best-selling or really iconic beers for their country, and we'd get something like, say, Guinness, perhaps Budweiser in the U.S., maybe Pabst. So not really craft beers as we tend to think of them as craft, but beers that are have been around so long and have a kind of tradition behind them. And so they have all kinds of interesting beers in this book here. A new edition is probably needed because, as I stated in the introduction, almost 1,400 breweries in the U.S., they claim. And this is 2010 actually, so it's 10 years now. But of course there are now, almost 5,000 craft breweries in the U.S., or 5,000 breweries total in the U.S. So, so the Cassel edition, I think, is 2011. It has a different cover, but it doesn't seem to be a really completely different edition here. The organization in this book is very interesting. How would you guess you would organize 1,001 beers? What would you do? One way would be to go by style, certainly, but over the years the number of styles has proliferated, and there are so many of them now, so that might not be the most useful way. What they did was they took an interesting tack. They organized it by color, the color of the beer. Okay, and it's not the way most people would go, I think. So they start out with amber beers, and then move on to blonde, and then white, and dark, and then specialty. And the last one, of course, is not a color at all, but they include things like lambics and fruit beer in that, aged beers, wood-aged beers, that sort of thing. So the photography is beautiful, and so you get all kinds of interesting pictures of beer with the glassware that was designed for it. That's so nice to see all together. Michael Jackson always did this in his books, and showing the beer with the glassware that was designed to hold that beer. So it's really really a series of beautiful photographs. The descriptions are brief but to the point. It's definitely a reference book. It's a reference book for you to, it's not a thing to read through, of course, but check up on beers that you happen to see, happen to want more information about. And so it has all this great information and beautiful kind of traditional photographs. So periodically they'll give you not just the beer, but some aspect of the brewing experience or beer drinking experience as well. They have an index, thank God, by country, so you can get that. They have a glossary in the back, which is kind of helpful. A list of contributors, again, 43 of them are pretty some of them are very well-known writers, and then an index by brewery, which is probably more helpful than any other index. So, how many of these beers have I had? I don't know exactly. I went through the whole book, and I counted 343 out of 1,001. 343. But in some cases, I really wasn't sure if I'd had it, but I was kind of guessing. So I would say maybe in about maybe 10% of the cases, I was guessing I had this beer, but I had no proof. Although I've been rating beers for well over 10 years now. There are beers I've had before that, and I wasn't quite sure, but I was guessing. So about a third of them. How many? The movie book, 1001 Movies, the famous critic Roger Ebert, he went through it, and he estimated that he had seen about a half of them. So I don't feel so bad, it's not, and I don't think I will ever get to 1001, but it's something to go for. And I really look forward to a new edition of this book. I'm sure it's an expensive undertaking, to do this, to grab 1,001 different beers and photograph them and write them up, so I'm not sure when it will happen, but I will certainly buy it when it comes out. And if you happen to see this book, and if you can hold it and buy it, do it, okay? Once again, this is 1001 beers you must try before you die. And I hope you buy the book, and I hope you try the beers. Cheers. Take care. See you next time. Bye-bye.